and Morty first aired in 2013 and quickly established itself as one of the best-loved shows out there. The character of Evil Morty fascinates fans, and for good reason. He was introduced in Season 1 as a diabolical version of Morty and has since become a fan favorite. They love digging up whatever they can about the mysterious evil genius, and the theories they've come up with are out of this world. Don't forget to hit that red subscribe button to be the first to know about all of our swifty new content.
What's your original reality and where's your Rick?
Gosh, we moved around so much it's hard to remember.
A Morty without a Rick. One of the biggest questions about Evil Morty, aside from his origins, is the question of what exactly he wants. We're given clues to understand that in episode 7 of season 3. The Morty who becomes president of the Citadel of Ricks is actually Evil Morty, who has now gained control and is turning the Citadel into a fascist state. Now, maybe he just has a desire for absolute power, but something tells us that the show's creators are a little more creative than that. This theory states Evil Morty's ultimate goal is to make every Morty in every timeline Rickless and have them brought back to the Citadel. By doing so, he would be securing his place in power for good. He wanted to create a crisis in which every, or at least the majority of Mortys would be without a Rick to lead them, and would pledge their allegiance to him instead. It is a really plausible explanation for why he's been hellbent on eliminating Rick since his first appearance in Season 1, and based on the outcome of Season 3, his plan seems to be working. It's hard to say what he will use his newfound power for, but we're hoping to find out in Season 4.
From the Ricks and Mortys that believe in this Citadel to the Ricks and Mortys that don't, you're outnumbered.
Evil Morty isn't evil at all. This theory is slightly more sentimental in nature, or at least has a little more hope left in it. Fans have suggested that the entire motivation behind all of the evil universe domination plans Evil Morty has carried out is actually a greater search for a Rick that cares about his Morty. They wonder if he is even evil at all, or is simply looking for love and guidance from Rick, if in a misguided and diabolical way. Because we know that Ricks aren't the most loving of grandfathers or people in general, and exist on a scale from most villainous to least, who, let's be honest, are still pretty bad, the idea is that Evil Morty is hunting for this least villainous Rick, the Rick he never had. He is eliminating all of the decidedly bad Ricks along the way. By using a machine to download their memories, he was able to see that the Rick we know actually does care about his Morty, as much as he would deny it. Evil Morty is trying to create a multiverse in which every existing Rick actually cares about their Morty, and in that way, he isn't really evil at all, aside from all the torture and mass murder, of course.
A cocky Morty can lead to some big problems. Can be a real bad thing for everybody.
Evil Morty is out for revenge. Once again exploring the questions of what our evil little friend's long-term plan is, some fans have decided that it is actually revenge against a Rick who abandoned him. For this theory, we have to go back to the future. Just kidding, it's the past. We know that Rick left Beth for 20 years before returning to her life at the beginning of Season 1, and this theory takes place during those missing 20 years. It states that at some point during that time, Rick knew or had a hand in raising the intelligent Morty who we now know as Evil Morty, but treated him really badly, as Ricks are prone to do. A catastrophic event caused Rick to abandon this version of Morty and make his way back into the timeline that we follow on the show. Because of his guilt over what happened, he tries to raise this current Morty to be a little less smart, but with more humanity than the first. The evil Morty that he abandoned is now on a quest for vengeance, and starts putting together his evil plans with the motivation of trapping Rick, stealing his memories, and at the same time absorbing his intelligence.
You're really a Rick?
Oh, of course I am.
Did a Rick and Morty switch brains? In a show where there are literally infinite possibilities spread over infinite universes, it's only natural that some completely unbelievable things are going to happen. This theory is one of them. There is an idea in the Rick and Morty fan community that Evil Morty is actually a Rick. This one is a bit complicated to untangle, so hang on to your plumbuses. We all know the character of Doofus Rick as the least intelligent Rick, and punching bag to all the other Ricks in the universe. But what if Doofus Rick is actually the most evil and most intelligent of them all? This theory wonders if this super evil Rick, in an attempt to get away with his master plan, disguised himself in the body of his Morty, effectively switching brains with him and creating both Doofus Rick and Evil Morty. So Doofus Rick actually has a Morty brain, and the character we know as Evil Morty is actually the most evil Rick. It goes on to speculate that even Doofus Rick's, unfortunate culinary tastes were programmed into him by the evil Rick in order to distract all the other Ricks in the Citadel, which sounds like a classic Rick shenanigan for sure.
You don't care about me at all. I'm no different than that jacket you've got on. I'm just a tool.
Could Morty turn evil too? We all like to believe that deep down under all of his criticism, Rick is actually a loving grandfather to Morty. This theory delves deep into the reasons why he is so harsh and critical in the first place. Fans on Reddit have put out the idea that the reason Rick is constantly putting down Morty is actually a tactic to suppress the evil Morty that lies dormant within him. In Season 3, we see Rick and Morty at an intergalactic spa in which all of their toxicities are removed. The effect on Morty is that he no longer has his crippling self-doubt and low self-esteem to contend with, and he becomes a Wall Street magnate, displaying a kind of intelligence that we don't see from him very often. While it seems like he's simply becoming the best version of himself, fans wonder if this version of Morty might have continued to evolve into the truly evil Morty we've met before. Rick's seemingly cruel behavior, and the way he has also removed all of Morty's memories of himself being wrong or slipping up, is actually a plan to keep Rick in control and to stop evil Morty from rising to the surface.
Grandpa, is this a scenario 3?
What's that, and who are you?
Oh man, it's a scenario 4.
Summer created evil Morty. Poor Summer. The firstborn daughter of the family has a hard time catching a break, and this theory doesn't do her any favors. Some fans have decided that evil Morty is in fact the result of Summer making a couple of big mistakes. In episode 8 of Season 3, we learned that Rick has systematically been removing Morty's traumatic memories, and in the meantime been erasing any instance of Rick making a mistake in front of his grandson. He's also been removing some of his own memories as well, and keeping them in shelf after shelf of colorful vials. When they get into a fight and accidentally erase both of their memories entirely, Summer enters, and we learn that she is Rick's contingency plan, tranquilizing them, restoring both of their memories, and putting them back on the couch as though nothing happened. This is where the fan theory comes in. Some have decided that at one time, Summer accidentally put Rick's memories into Morty, and because of this, created evil Morty. On the other hand, there is also those who believe that Morty stole the tranquilizer gun, shot Summer and Rick, and took all of Rick's memories himself, explaining why evil Morty knows he is a Morty and yet is hyper-intelligent.
The Morty Party candidate still in the race, and you just gotta love him for that.
Evil Morty was the hero. One of the best parts of Rick and Morty is the explanation of infinite possibilities in the multiverse. How every possible world that can be imagined somehow exists, whether it's a world where humans evolved from corn, to a world where fake doors are a commodity and commercials go on forever. This fan theory takes the alternate reality premise and runs with it, suggesting that evil Morty is actually from a universe in which the Mortys are the intelligent ones, and the Ricks are the lowly inferior sidekicks. It only makes sense that there would be such a universe, as literally all possibilities are true, and yet the creators of the show have never explicitly explored this one. We know that evil Morty has it out for all Ricks, and this hatred could be driven by the fact that he has seen so many realities in which Mortys are subservient to Ricks, and is hellbent on correcting this injustice. He believes in the potential of all Mortys, and knows that they would be capable of much more if not forced into the sidekick role by Rick, and therefore has turned evil and began systematically eliminating Ricks. It's also a possible explanation from where Doofus Rick is from, and perhaps is the sidekick of evil Morty himself.
Yes, Slow Rick, Tall Morty. Did I graduate this time yet? Anything's possible, Tall Morty.
Evil Morty is a future Rick. This fan theory is a theory based off of another theory based off of another theory, and so on and so on. But it's such an entertaining idea that it is definitely worth a mention. First, we start with the idea that all Mortys eventually grow up to become Ricks. Fans bring up a pretty interesting question. Why would Rick choose Morty as a sidekick when Summer is older, smarter, and more mature? She really does seem like the logical choice, if Rick doesn't need Morty as a human shield. There's also the fact that Justin Roiland does both voices for Rick and Morty, and while Morty hasn't developed the same problems with gas as Rick has, they share other similar speech patterns. So the idea is that Rick chooses Morty because he knows what he will become, and has taken him on to train him. Evil Morty comes in when Morty discovers that his future has already been decided and rebels against it. He, who has now grown into Rick, leaves his world and takes a Morty with him to a new universe, where he attempts to raise him differently. But when he sees him becoming more and more evil, abandons him and rejoins the family, starting again with a new Morty. And on it goes. Evil Morty is a robot. Let's take a breather and move on to a theory that might be a little easier to follow. Could Evil Morty actually be a robot? We know that Evil Morty is definitely a cyborg as we see him tuck in wires that dangle from his eyes in Season 1, but there's a difference between a person with robotic enhancements and a robot. These fans have taken it a step past cyborg and gone full RoboCop on us. Well, he's still a cyborg, but... And we're along for the ride. They theorize that Rick would have built a Morty robot in the past and abandoned it when it went haywire. We do know that he has robot versions of the family, who we see in Season 3, Episode 2, and for a brief moment the Morty robot actually gains sentience. So since we know that these robots are capable of becoming sentient, it's not too far-fetched to imagine that that is the case for Evil Morty. It explains the hyper-intelligence, his ability to control the Rick and imitate Morty's mannerisms perfectly, and his lack of emotion regarding torturing so many Mortys. As for the question of why he is so evil, the idea goes that at one time Rick tried to shut him down, for which evil robot Morty has had a grudge ever since. Evil Morty is the original Morty, which leads us to the last, the greatest, and final Evil Morty fan theory. This is the most popular and widely agreed upon theory existing on the internet, and for good reason. This one states that Evil Morty is actually Rick's original Morty, and that the one we know and love is simply a replacement. The story goes that before Rick figured out that he needed Morty to be undetectable to authorities and unable to track, he experimented with making his grandson as intelligent as himself. Using the Mega Seeds, he made a serum that he injected into Morty, hoping that this smarter version would help him on his adventures. But when it became too competitive between the two, Rick left and entered the world we follow on the show. Rick unknowingly created the Morty who would eventually try and destroy him, because of having been abandoned by his mentor at a young age. There is some evidence fans have found to justify this theory, like photos of Rick holding Morty as a baby even though he left 6 years before Morty was born, and how Rick is constantly frustrated with current Morty because he was so used to interacting with his super smart counterpart.
I'm gonna find some fuel and take a big fat Morty. That's my new word for because of today's events.
And that's the way the news goes. What did you think about these fan theories? Do you have any ideas about Evil Morty that we missed? What do you hope to see happen with him in Season 4? Let us know in the comments and subscribe to Screen Rant to keep up with all of our awesome content.